some big picture themes. Cooper Howard with us to talk bonds alongside Michael Townsend to talk some political impact on markets. Mike is the managing director of legislative and regulatory affairs. Cooper's director and fixed income strategist. Afternoon, gentlemen. Great to have you both here. It's been a heck of a week in markets, Mike, so forgive us if we missed some of the DC haps. What happened in your world this week?
Oh, it is a crazy time, obviously, with all the angst over whether President Biden should step away from being the nominee. That's gone back and forth. I feel like it changed directions about 5 times during the course of the week, and that's still ongoing. It's going to continue into next week, I think. But also next week, of course, we get the Republican National Convention. So former President Trump, who's been kind of laying low over the last couple of weeks, which, strategically makes a lot of sense when Democrats are fighting with each other. He's been kind of laying low. Well, he'll be back in the spotlight. He's going to pick a vice president, and he's going to formally accept the nomination in Milwaukee at the convention. So between that story and the ongoing Biden story that's going to play out over the next week, I think next week is going to be a crazy political week.
Wow. Mike, how would you characterize sort of the status of their economic discussion at this juncture in the race versus kind of what is standard or previous races? I don't really know what they're proposing economically. Have I missed something?
Yeah, Albert, I think that's exactly right. This race is not about policy, right? It's about character. It's about these two people that everyone has an opinion about already. And that's all kind of baked in. But we've seen really small discussion of actual policy. And, when I'm going around the country talking to investors, they're asking me about stuff like the federal deficit and the national debt. What are we going to do about that? What are we going to do about taxes next year? We've got a debt ceiling fight coming up in 2025. There's more interest, I think, among investors in some of these policy discussions that just aren't happening at the campaign level. So hopefully we'll get through this next few weeks and start to get back to some of the actual policy issues, because these two candidates have wildly different views on how things should go.
Okay, so that's reassuring to hear. So I'm not totally out of the loop. I was kind of imagining things but then again, you're right. It's just all about persona, character right now. Okay, they're challenging each other to golf. Nobody's talking about the economy, I guess. Cooper, does it make your job difficult at all in the research center, trying to look beyond, what are we at, 3-4 months?
Not really, because we have an expert in our research center of Mike. So we turn all the political questions over to him, and he makes it a lot easier for us. So we're lucky to have him on our team.
What do you think about how bonds have steepened down the curve? Because some have argued there's a little political role in there. Do you think any of that is showing up at this point?
Yeah, I think when you look at the steepness of the yield curve, or the steepening of the yield curve, because we are still inverted, it's important to look at kind of what part of the market is moving, or where is the market moving. And if you look at today's moves, the 2-year yield is actually moving lower, and that's what's causing the steepening in the yield curve. So I think that that's more related to the outlook on Fed policy than it is anything else. If we saw the long end of the yield curve moving higher, that'd probably be on more growth prospects. So I think the steepening of the yield curve is likely because what we got from yesterday's CPI report. We knew we saw that was pretty much broad declines across the board. So that was probably something that was being chaired by Chairman Powell. The other thing with the PPI number, if you look at the kind of surface level, that wasn't great. It accelerated. But if you dig under the hood a little bit, some of those subcomponents, Oliver, that feed into PCE, which is the Fed's preferred measure, those showed a little bit of it slowing down. So might be that PCE comes in a little bit better than expected. And again, that's more good news on the inflation front, which is what the Fed wants. So I think that's the reason why 2-year yields are moving lower, and why the yield curve is steepening today so far.
Okay. But I'm not hearing much about growth potential for the back end, right? That's why, this is a bull steepener. It's coming down everywhere.
Yeah, we'll see on the growth potential. I think that if you kind of look at growth potential, one new thing that you have to watch is what's happening with the labor market. A couple weeks ago, or 2 weeks ago, I should say, it seems like a couple weeks ago at this point. But if you look at the labor report, I think what was notable there wasn't necessarily the unemployment number nor the non-farm payroll addition. I think what was notable was the subtraction, the 2-month net revision of jobs. So that shows that the labor market's slowing down, shows that potentially the economy is slowing down. looking forward, I also think that it'll be interesting to watch what comes of retail sales next week. That's kind of an indication of what the consumer is doing. So that'll be another big important report to watch going forward.
Okay. I can't help but think in some ways the market also is considering Powell's role going forward. Mike, is it a given that if former President Trump becomes next President Trump, that Powell is definitely out? Is that like assumed in the circles or what?
You know, it's important to remember that Powell's term does not end until well into 2026. In fact, no member of the Fed Board of Governors that their term ends before 2026. So, you know, they could leave ahead of time, obviously, of their own choosing.
Right.
But I get asked all the time this whole question about whether, you know, if Trump was elected president, could he fire Powell? And that is a really, really complex.
That's what I was about to ask.
And I don't think anyone knows the answer to exactly how that would work. So, you know, I think he's around for a while, even if the presidency changes.
Okay, that's a really important point. Then, so you think Powell would choose to stay?
Well, I don't know. You know, I can't speak for whether he'd choose to stay. I just think that he can stay, and you know, I sort of expect that he would probably want to, you know, keep doing what he's been doing and continue to see this transition that the Fed is going through or going to start going through probably in September with the rate cutting cycle. And he'll probably want to see that through. So, you know, I, of course, have no particular insight as to what he might do inside his own thinking. But I try to remind people that there's no mechanism until 2026 to force him out without really, I think, entering into a legal quagmire.
Great stuff. Okay. Really good information, guys. Thanks. Excellent teamwork, Mike Townsend. Cooper Howard. So next week,